Hey, DBE fam, welcome back to the show. Today we've got a real, raw, honest, quick, juicy, spicy episode for you. So I recently asked on my social media accounts, what do you want to hear from me? What do you want to learn about? What topics, themes, questions do you have when it comes to podcasting? And on my computer here, I have a whole list of questions that came in. And this morning I was scrolling through, deciding which one I wanted to do a topic on. And this question, it's really a series of questions, really stood out to me. I decided not only do I want to do an episode on it, but I don't want to think about it. So I quickly just plugged in my microphone and here we are. I didn't give myself a moment to come up with bullets or what my answer would be. I just wanted to pop on and answer as if we were sort of just in a conversation together and this question was brought up, or if I was on a coaching call and it was sort of given to me on the fly. That's how I want this episode to feel. So the question in front of me, I'm going to rattle it off. There's a bunch of things here that the person said, but she wrote in and said, I'd love to hear more about what makes it worth it for me. What do I love about my leap into entrepreneurship? What inspired me to dig in? What keeps me here, motivating other people to follow their dreams? And then she said, don't give me this standard answer of I make my own hours, freedom, and money. But in your core, maybe it has to do with something about who you are becoming in order to create what you have. Maybe it was about accepting the person that you are now or that you were going to become. Maybe it has to do with knocking down doors and barriers. Can you think of life outside the box in this answer? So I just love this question for so many reasons. And like I said, I didn't sit here and bullet things out. I have nothing written. So if we can just sort of start at the top, what makes it worth it? You, like, let's get there. Let's go right away. I love crying. I cry every day. I'm such an empath, but really, truly, in the gratitude that I do have for what we have created, what makes it worth it is you. And it's the ripple effect, which is part of our mission at Digital Business Evolution. So simply by you doing something, seeing something, hearing something, showing up in your life in a different way, repeating something that you've maybe done, taking action on something that you've wanted to take action on, what happens is there's a ripple effect. And so when you show up as this other person, this new way, these new habits, so do the people around you. Simply the way that you carry yourself, your emotional intelligence, your ability to have difficult conversations, your desire and craving to go after your dreams and actually take action on those things, you putting yourself out there, you doing the work, you reading books, investing in yourselves, listening to podcasts. Like when you do all of those things, just by being that new version of yourself, people around you are affected, and that's the ripple effect. So whether it's your spouse, your kids, your neighbors, coworkers, other people see and feel just who you are and who you're becoming, and then they slowly start to pick up on those things. When you carry yourself differently and you use language differently and you catch yourself in your language, these are little things that end up causing this ripple effect. When we go to social media, when you stand up and say something that you stand for, when you put out a polarizing opinion, when you bust a myth, when you share a fact, when you show us your human side and you mess up on your Instagram stories and you don't delete it, that causes a ripple effect for people that are watching, for everyone who's a part of your world, even the people that you don't even know are a part of your world. So for me, I mean, that's what makes it worth it. It's any little tiny thing that can get carried on and passed down for generations to come that is totally worth it. And in the context of what I do and what we teach here at DBE is social media marketing and digital business building and running a company and scaling a team. And so the sheer fact that I get to help you build your business in any niche that you want, then you go and help people in that particular niche as you are as a service provider, whether you're helping people with real estate, somatic breath work, relationships, infertility, lose weight, gain muscle, gut health, home decor, organizing, decluttering, feng shui. Yes, we've helped people in all of these areas, grooming your dogs, training your dogs. I mean, there's so many things that you then help people do. So for me, it's everything is worth it. The long hours, the tough nights, the crying over technology, the frustration, the difficult conversations, all of the things that have happened that I've been gifted the opportunity to move through and grow through over the years, that makes the juice worth the squeeze 10 times over. So that's my true and honest answer. It's seeing what you do and then how you affect other people. And this first happened to me. I really started getting this realization when I was a trainer. So if you didn't know, I was a celebrity personal trainer for 18 years. And my online business that I started in 2012, 11 years ago, that's actually where my online business had started and lived from 2012 to 2020. It wasn't until 2020 that I actually allowed my certifications to expire. Now, I became a trainer in 2001, but in 2020 is when I let that part of my business go. So up until just 3 years ago, I was doing both business mentoring and health and fitness coaching online and in person. When pandemic hit, I stopped the in-person stuff, and then slowly the virtual stuff just sort of dissipated out very organically because I'd spent so many years doing it, and I just was sort of done with that. But my first realization was, wow, wait a minute, as a trainer, I can only help so many people. And I went from the one-to-one model of in-person training. Maybe you do group fitness classes, so that's a one-to-many model. But I took that and I scaled that in the online world. And so now I could help people one-to-one in person or one-to-many in person, but I can also help one-to-one and one-to-many online, which is global. And then at a point that was even maybe capped, or my time was full, or the capacity that I had. So when I first started business mentoring and coaching, I actually only helped fit pros. I was only working with fitness professionals because that's the industry that I knew. And I wanted to make sure that I really did have a framework that was going to work in other industries before I felt comfortable opening it up to everybody. And so when I initially started helping people with their businesses, fitness professionals, they were then helping more of who my normal client would be. And so now they're out there helping more people get stronger, get leaner, fall in love with their body, lose weight, avoid things like, osteoporosis, injury prevention. And so that was where I first had this realization of, wow, like the more people I can help in this one area, the more people they can help in this bigger area. And so by default, I'm sort of still helping people in health and fitness. And that's how it felt for me. So it is 10 times over worth it. I can't 100 times over worth it for so many different reasons. To expand on this, what do I love about my leap into entrepreneurship? I think my story is similar to a lot of people's. I never sought out to be an entrepreneur. It was never something I wanted to do. I did not grow up in a family of entrepreneurs. In fact, I felt like a failure when I was a teacher. And that's a great job. Gosh, our teachers don't get enough credit. Teaching is an incredible job. We need teachers. I love teachers. I'm still a teacher every single day. But I had gone down the path to be a physical therapist, a doctorate of physical therapy. And in my first year of my doctorate program, I took a quote unquote leave of absence, which, here we are 20 years later and I never went back. So I guess you could say I just quit. I dropped out, right? And I had wanted to be a physical therapist since I was like 9 or 10. I grew up in PT as a competitive gymnast. I had my own electro stim machine at my house by the age of 12. It's what a lot of athletes do. It's a very natural progression for them to go that route. So I had wanted to be a PT since I was about 10. Knew I went to school for that, went to undergrad specifically for that, got into grad school, and my first year I was like, wow, this actually is not what I want to do. But I grew up very much in a family of a lot of doctors, lawyers, accountants, very traditional. I had a grandparent who was a teacher, but very like traditional routes. And so for me, I went through a quarter life crisis when I dropped out of my DPT program. I ended up in the fashion world. I went to fashion school. I lived on my brother's couch for a year in New York City, as everybody does at one point in their life, right? Everyone should do. I worked in the fashion industry for a little while, and I had my own accessory line, and I loved that, but I didn't feel that was something I should be doing either. And so then I stepped back into what I had already known and been doing for many years, which was fitness, and went back into full-time personal training and writing for magazines and doing fitness competitions and sort of building that part of my business when my parents had lovingly encouraged me to get a teaching degree to quote unquote fall back on as sort of plan B or C. And it was at that time now in my mid-20s that I said, all right, this is ridiculous. All my friends are living in apartments. They're all getting engaged. They're all getting promoted. And I'm still bouncing around from school to school, having done undergrad, grad school, and undergrad again. That's when I decided to go be a teacher. And I spent 8 years there. And as I was teaching full time, I'd get out at 3:25 every day. I found myself grasping and reaching and looking for things to fulfill what I felt was empty. And I had a lot of emptiness. I had a lot of void that I was feeling. I loved what I did. I loved teaching. I still do. It's definitely my purpose. I'm obsessed with my kids. I love sports. I was a phys ed teacher. It was like the best. It was the best. It was absolutely the best. And yet I still felt really unfulfilled. So I'm telling you this story, and I've shared it before, but I didn't even know what an entrepreneur was until I was probably like 31 years old. That was never a path that was shown to me. That was never an option, or so I didn't think. I just was searching for myself. I was looking for myself. And in an effort to search for stuff to fulfill me and the voids that I felt in my life, I ended up creating all of these little side hustles. And I call them my quote unquote cute side hustle because, again, I wasn't trying to be an entrepreneur. I wasn't trying to build a business. I wasn't trying to replace my income. I just had space. I got out of work early. I was home by 3:25. Mike, my husband, used to commute into New York City. He'd get home at like 9 o'clock at night. And I just needed to fill that gap of time. I'm very much a doer. I have shared my story of going from winning to worthy. And I found for so long, and I think a lot of us do, my worth was defined by how much I was doing, how successful I was, my awards, my accolades, my grades in school, all of that type of stuff. And so for me, I had this literal space, this gap of time that I needed to fill it with some hobbies. And I love helping people and I love teaching. And I was already working as a trainer nights and weekends after school as a teacher. I was also working as a high school gymnastics coach on nights and weekends after school. And so it just felt very natural to start creating all these little pockets. And so what really started as, I wish I had fill in the blank. I wish I had a community of women who were going through what I was going through. So I created one on Facebook. It ended up kind of going viral. This was in 2014, and 700 women ended up joining this free Facebook group. And then I found my purpose in supporting them and carrying them and giving them ideas and free resources and coaching. And that's what I was doing, but just for fun. I wasn't monetizing it. And then I wish I had this cute clothing line, so I created it and I was selling it on Zazzle, which is like, if someone buys it, they create it, but I didn't have to buy in bulk. And then I wish that I had friends to go into New York City with me after school to take fitness classes, because in 2013, 14, 15, 16, it was the boom of boutique fitness. And we lived right outside Manhattan, and they had all these cool fitness classes. There were spin bikes in the water and surfboards on Bosu balls and neon lights where you had to like run and hit colors on the wall. And there was just all these cool booming fitness classes that I wanted to go take. But my friends at the time weren't interested in working a full day of work and then taking a train or a bus into New York City, paying $40 for a fitness class and then going back home again. And so because I didn't have that community, I created it. And that's where I had created my first kind of real little business, which was called Fit Trips, friendship inspired training. And the idea here was a play off of field trips, as I was an elementary school teacher. And I always used to feel like, why don't we have field trips as adults? So I created this thing that I ran for 4 years where every single month I would bring women into New York. It started in New York. We ended up expanding, but I'd bring women on a field trip. And it was a fitness-based field trip where we would do a fitness class and brunch. And we'd get swag bags and we'd do prizes and giveaways, and all the tickets, the proceeds from the tickets would go to charity. I'd have the women pick different charities each month. And my first fit trip, I've shared this story, I sold 5 tickets and only 4 women came. And the morning of that fit trip, I was hysterical crying because I was so embarrassed. Only 4 women were gonna come and only 5 had bought a ticket. And Mike looked at me and he said, you have a choice right now. You're at a fork in the road. You can complain about it and be upset and your ego could be bruised and you can be embarrassed, or you can go in and you can give these 4 women the best experience they've ever had and just trust that it'll turn into something else. And that's what I did. I chose to give them the best experience. And I remember I gave them a speech at the first day, and actually one of the girls laughed at me, which was awful. But I gave them this whole speech, how it was going to turn into this big thing. And I had this big vision for it. And again, never wanting to be an entrepreneur. I was a teacher. This was just like a nights and weekends thing because I wanted to do it. And I gave this whole spiel and she laughed at me and it was awful. And I had the best time though. And then the next month it went from 4 women to 10 women. And the following month there were 23 women. And then Shape magazine saw us and they wrote a whole article about it because I had gotten the girls all matching shirts. And we went to this big event and we were all wearing these neon yellow shirts that said Fit Trip. And there were 23 of us. And so someone had asked like, who started this thing? And the girls pointed to me, they did an article. And then once it went from that, it grew. And then every month for 4 years, we had 75 to 100 women month after month after month. But still, I never thought that it could be anything. I never thought that I was going to try to make it into anything. If I'm being honest, most of the time we were in the red or we were just breaking even because I was donating the profits or the proceeds, sometimes both, to different charities. And so it was not a great business model for me in that sense. I wasn't really making money off of it. But all around the same time, 2013, I got involved in network marketing. And again, it was just sort of, I'm interested in doing this thing. This is fun. I'm filling my time. And oh, cool, if I make a little bit of money on the side, I can help pay the bills. Because we were living the American dream. We were totally living paycheck to paycheck. We could just squeak by with our mortgage. And so any extra would be helpful. And so from 2012 to 2017, when I left my teaching job, those 5 years were just, it wasn't for anything. I wasn't going to be an entrepreneur. I didn't think anything of it. And it wasn't until 2016, 17 that I really started to watch a lot of women on social media who were doing very similar things as me. They were fitness models, they were speakers, they were coaches, they were doing bodybuilding competitions. We were on the same fitness team. We were using the same network marketing company products, shakes that we were drinking. And a lot of these women in my community started all of a sudden building out online memberships. And they were really, I was selling ebooks, fitness ebooks for $79 an ebook. And I was selling fitness plans. I started doing that in 2013, but it was like a couple people. I wasn't really trying. I wasn't thinking I can scale it, but I was watching some of these gals that I knew personally now all of a sudden scaling, and they're having hundreds of people buy their ebooks, and they're getting sponsors, and they're working with brands like Adidas and Lululemon. And I just saw what was possible. And like I always say, I borrowed the evidence that it was possible when I didn't have the evidence in my own life. I didn't have a massive following. Nobody was reaching out to me. I wasn't getting brand deals. It was just a thing for me. It was a passion project. It was a hobby. It was something to fill space, but I loved it. And it was changing lives. And so when I decided to leave my teaching job in 2017, that's when I decided to go all in. That's really when the wheels started turning of, wow, what could this be? Am I an entrepreneur? Do I have what it takes? Am I cut out for that? At the time, I had never taken a formal business class in my life. I came from science to then fashion, back to science, teaching, education. So it was like, who am I to do that? But I think ignorance is bliss. And for me, I definitely was living in a world of ignorance is bliss. There was nothing stopping me. I wasn't afraid of failing or messing up because for so long, it wasn't a thing that I was trying to make happen. It was just a project for me. So it wasn't until I actually quit my teaching job when I realized like, oh, wow, maybe I'm stepping into this thing as entrepreneurship. But even still, I would say that whole first year that I left my job, I still wasn't trying to be an entrepreneur. I was working as a trainer in a gym, which is something I had been doing at the time for, 13 years or something like that. So I still just kind of replaced my teaching job with now a training job. I was still an employee. I was not living in the mindset of being an entrepreneur. So for me, I never sought out to be an entrepreneur. And this might bug you. This might get under your skin. It might grind your gears a little bit because it's like, oh, it must be nice. I fell into your lap. But it just happened organically for me. I didn't quit and go be an entrepreneur. I didn't decide I was going to be an entrepreneur. I didn't set out that just was never the plan. I didn't reverse engineer a business plan. It just kind of happened organically. And so when I did leave my job to get into sort of quote unquote entrepreneurship, I left because I wanted to be the next Jillian Michaels. I wanted to build a brand like Tone It Up. I wanted to be the next big fitness thing that was like the household name, the Biggest Loser trainer, something like that, right? And so that was the path that I was on, and that's sort of what I was going for. And obviously it has unfolded in so many different ways, which is why I always share and love Steve Jobs' quote, you can't connect the dots looking forwards, you can only connect them looking backwards, and you have to trust that they'll appear. Now I can see why I did the things that I did and who I met and the skills and all of the different experiences and challenges that I've had. But at the time, I just was kind of going for it. What inspired me to dig in really was the one single thing that I heard on a podcast the day that I decided to quit my job, and that was in October of 2016. I've shared this story so many times, but I was a teacher, 2016, and I had these cute side hustles, but I wanted to go all in on my side hustles to be the next, Jillian Michaels household name, Sean T, whoever it was going to be, Billy Blanks, right? Like I wanted a DVD set. I'm dating myself, but that's what I wanted. I wanted like a fitness DVD set. And when I was driving to work listening to this podcast, this man was interviewing a woman, and she was a teacher and she sold jewelry on Etsy. Don't forget, I also was selling jewelry. I went to fashion school. I was literally doing the exact same thing. I was a teacher selling jewelry and hosting fitness field trips for fun. And he said, if you gave yourself a year to go all in on the jewelry and it didn't work out, what would be your worst case scenario? And she said, I don't know, I'd go back to teaching. I might not be able to get the same job, but I've been a teacher for a decade, so I know I can get a job. And he said, great. How does it feel to wake up every day and live in your worst case scenario? And that's the moment I pulled the car over on Route 287 in New Jersey. I was hysterical crying. I texted Mike. I said, I can't do this anymore. That was the night that I decided to quit. And it was just a couple weeks later that I walked in and I resigned. My principal thought I was going cuckoo bananas. I was losing it. But that's the moment that really changed everything for me. And what inspired me to dig in was watching other people do it. Watching people that I knew, watching people that I didn't know, watching people who I felt maybe had less experience than me, right? Sometimes that can irk us, that bothers us. We get annoyed, we're resentful. Like, I have more certifications, I have more experience. But what if you reframe the way you look at that? For me, it was like, whoa, I have more experience, I have more certifications, I have more fill in the blank, and this person's doing it. This person's doing something that I would like to do. That's incredible evidence that it's possible. And when I was doing network marketing and I saw people, walking across the stage making $1 million in this network marketing company, despite the fact that I made $48,000 a year as a teacher, I just started to borrow the evidence and say, I'm going to make $1 million. I'm going to be a millionaire. And I just started to adopt it. And so all of these things inspired me. People with less followers than me were getting brand deals on Instagram. Women were, putting up content that I thought, wow, I could do that too. And so I just borrowed the evidence, and that's what was inspiring me. What keeps me motivated to help other people follow their dream? Probably, it's not about me. It's never been about me. And that's interesting to say when you're a personal brand and you're the face of the brand. I'm the podcast host, I'm the content creator, it's my Instagram page, I'm the business, right? But I'm not. It's about you, and it's about the people that I'm helping, and it's about you overcoming your own fears and getting out of your way and those limiting beliefs and those imposter. It's about you setting up the systems in your business and trying it in a way that feels good for you and understanding the process. It's about you creating content and you helping people and you asking questions. So for motivation, it's not about me. And I don't have kids yet, but I would imagine it's like when you're a parent and you're sick, but your kid gets up in the morning, like you still got to get up to help your kid, right? So despite the fact that you don't feel well, it's like they're the motivation. They need you. And it's not to say that you need me, but you're the motivation. So my gosh, I've been creating content online every single day for 11 years. There are absolutely days that I don't want to do it, that I feel like I have nothing to say, that I don't want to show up, that I want to take a digital detox, that I feel like nobody's listening, or I've said this a million times. Or how about my peers, right? I look at them and it's like, well, they've got bigger brands. Maybe they have more followers. They have bigger email lists. They're speaking on more stages. And so I come up against those things too, of self-doubt or imposter or comparisonitis, right? And so in the moments that happens, I get to remind myself, this has nothing to do with me. This has nothing to do with me. And if there's one person that can hear one thing that I say today that will change one small thing in their day for 1 second, then it's all worth it. And that's the thing. We put so much pressure on ourselves. It's like, I put out this piece of content and it doesn't go viral. What's the point? I shouldn't do it again. No. The person who puts in the reps is the person who gets to the end or who wins, right? It's not a race. We are actually never going to get to the end. But you know what I mean? Like, it's the repetition. The amount of times that I've had clients, I'd say more often than not, purchase something from me, whether it's low ticket, high ticket, or really high ticket. The amount of times that people have purchased something from me whom I've never talked to, we've never DM'd, they don't comment on my stuff, and then they appear to pop out of nowhere and swipe their credit card, it's more often than not. And I know for me as a consumer, I do the exact same thing, and I've shared this story so many times. There was a coach I worked with back in 2018. I had been following her for years, from YouTube to Instagram and anywhere, right? She finally posted that she was doing a mastermind, that I hit the requirement. It was the right timing. I wanted to join. It was $25,000. So I joined. And we were at the retreat in person. And there were about 10 of us sitting around. And it came up in conversation somehow that I, admittedly, had never once commented on any of her posts. I had been following her for years. I had never commented on a single post. I had never DM'd her. I had never reshared her stuff. I binged her stuff. I binged her content, her podcast, her YouTube, her Instagram, but I never shared, I never liked, I never commented. not for any reason. I just was watching silently in the back, sort of waiting for her to put out an invitation or an offer to something that I wanted. And when she did, it was like, here's my credit card. So to her, I came out of nowhere. But to me, I'm like, I've been following you since 2015. It's been 4 years of me waiting for you to put something out. And the funny thing was, every single girl in the room said the exact same thing. So there were 10 of us that paid $25,000 for a mastermind, and none of us had even spoken to this girl before. That is happening in your audience every single day. It doesn't matter the size of your audience, what you talk about, what you sell. You have silent listeners. You've got people in the back who are watching your every move, and you're changing their life every single day, whether you know it or not. And this is the ripple effect. That's the stuff that gets me motivated. It has nothing to do with me. It has everything to do with you. That's the whole point of business. It's to offer solutions to problems. It's to help you get out of where you're at. It's to help you see things differently. It's to help collapse the amount of time that it's going to take you to get from A to Z. That's what mentorship is. That's what business is. This mug, it's a solution. It holds liquid. It also keeps it hot and cold. That's why we purchase it, right? That's all it is. It's really simple. So your business should solve problems that people have that they don't want. It should also offer solutions to problems that they have that they don't want. Very simple. So it's about you. And then just to answer the last part of this on the line of like what keeps me motivated and excited and going that doesn't have to do with I make my own hours or I get the freedom or the time or the money or whatever. I think there's a huge element of life is a game. I see it as a game now. I didn't before, or I did, but I thought the only way to win was to have the awards and the accolades and the money and the credibility and the as seen ons and the magazines and the media and the National Honor Society and the A+ and the good job and the high five. And I think a lot of us can relate to that. I don't know if you can. Maybe. And what I've learned over the years and what I'm still learning is that I'm worthy regardless of those things. And I really was exposed to this lesson about 20 years ago. I think it was 2003 when I had checked myself into an outpatient program for an eating disorder that I had for about 8 years. And it was in that moment really where I saw when I remove my ego, because ego is your biggest overhead, right? My dear friend Chris Mentor always says that. Ego is your biggest overhead. I just said Chris Harder, who was a mentor. Ego will cost you the most. Relationships, understanding, admitting you don't know something, like it will just cost you the most. So in I think it was 2003-ish, when I checked myself into outpatient therapy, that was really the first time that I raised my hand and said, I need help. I need help. I don't know how to do this. I can't do this anymore. This isn't working for me. Something's got to give. And it was in that moment that asking for help saved my life. And I didn't do it again for a couple of years, but the next time I did do it, however many years later it was when I ended up reaching out for help for another reason. And then in 2013, I hired my first business coach or mentor or fitness coach. And then in 2014, I hired my first business coach. And it was like these little breadcrumbs of every time I ask for help, every time I get in a room that makes me uncomfortable, every time I admit that I'm wrong or that I don't know something, I grow. And that's the game. There's no end. It's not, we're all racing to get somewhere. We're racing to get to the end, to get to the other side. And what I've realized now at 39, a couple of years ago, maybe 6-7 years ago, the only way we get to the other side is when we're no longer here. So I don't know what the race is all about anyway, right? Like I don't want to not be here anymore. I want to stay in the game. And if you think of a game and you think of video games or a board game, with the game of life and the game of business, we write the rules. And so if you don't like how the game is being played, you get to rewrite the rules. And I have found for myself, I've just learned to rewrite the rules over and over. And if I keep, falling into the swamp at the same part of the game, it's like, well, why don't I just change that? Or if the tool that I have, the hammer that I have, or the thing in my backpack, I'm just thinking of video games. It's like, if that tool isn't working, let me try a different tool instead of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And what if I change the way that I can quote unquote win the game? So instead of having to complete the board or get a certain amount of points or get accolades or awards or whatever that might be, what if the winning of the game is just having fun along the way, is collecting people and building relationships and connecting with people and learning new things and actually just filling my toolbox with as many tools as possible and experiencing new things and trying to see things with new perspective and be open to changing my mind and having difficult conversations like, what if the game is just that? And so I've really changed the way that I approach life. I've changed the way that I approach business. And what I would say is my favorite part of entrepreneurship is that it exposes parts of yourself that otherwise could be very easily overlooked or avoided. And I'm not saying people who are in 9-to-5 jobs are not also working on personal development. That is not what I'm saying. But what I have realized is that when you're in something like entrepreneurship, it is a rocket ship to personal development. And you're on that rocket ship whether you like it or not. And it's ultimately your choice if you're going to resist it, because what you resist persists, or if you're going to lean into it. And if you're in this world with me, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The moment that I stepped into network marketing, when I started practicing sales, putting myself out there, doing live videos, even if I wasn't selling something, when I started putting myself out there with content, learning how to accept things like rejection, comparison, limiting beliefs, imposter, like all of this stuff, it's pouring gasoline on the fire of personal growth and development, emotional intelligence, all of these things. And so what I am obsessed with is growth. I have always been obsessed with learning. I will forever be a student. If I could go to school all the time, I would, which is why I love books so much. I'm obsessed with books and podcasts. I love learning. I will forever be a student. I don't know if being a student is a job, but if it is, like, I'm in. But for me, it's that. It's the more action that I take, the more clarity that I get, the more confidence that I build. The more mistakes that I make, they're not mistakes, they're just breadcrumbs to lessons. The more failures, they're not failures, they're just redirections, right? The more opportunities, the more I put myself out there, the more that I get to learn about myself. And the more that I get to learn about myself, the more I feel that I'm able to show up for others and help others in a capacity at which I couldn't before. So yes, to answer your question, I am obsessed with the time freedom, the location freedom, the career freedom, the financial freedom, the creative freedom. For me, I don't know that I ever was a great employee. I don't know that I will ever, if I have to, I have the opportunity, I could go be an employee again. If push comes to shove, I have no ego. I will do what I need to do to make ends meet. But at the end of the day, I'm not sure that that's the path for me. I wasn't a bad employee. I just have always really zigged when others zag. I tend to be a little bit of a rule breaker. I'm a rule follower where I need to be, but I like to push the boundaries. I'm a creative. I'm a visionary. Like you, like so many people in my world, in my audience, in our community. So many coaches are visionaries. So many entrepreneurs are creatives. I like to just test it a little bit. Picasso said, learn the rules, like paint inside the lines so that you could break the rules. That wasn't his quote, but he said something around that. Like learn how to paint inside the lines so that you can paint outside the lines. Learn why each brush is used for each particular type of painting. The edge that you might want on a brush, the bristles you might want, the coarseness of the brush, the size of the brush. Like learn how to use the tools so that you can then come up with your own way to recreate and reinvent and reimagine the way that the tools are used. That's how I see entrepreneurship. And for me, while you don't want this answer, you cannot put a price on the life that we get to create, Mike and I together. I'm so grateful every single day when we walk the dog in the middle of the day, the fact that we both get to be together in the middle of the day and walk the dog. And it has nothing to do with jet setting and private flights, which we've never taken a private jet, right? But it has nothing to do with like the standard, I can take a vacation whenever I want and I don't look at the credit card bill and it doesn't matter, because that's not true. It does matter for us. It absolutely matters. And we prioritize certain areas. We put things in our life in buckets like we all do. And so for me, there's nothing wrong with it. I am not a handbag girl. Funny enough, I went to school for that, right? Like I design and make my own handbags. I'm not a label girl. I don't like expensive clothing. I don't care about that. I don't have red bottom shoes. I don't know that I ever will. If you gift them to me, I'm not even sure that I'd necessarily wear them. Like I just am not into that. But experiences Mike and I are into. And this is our priority. There's nothing right or wrong with it. Being able to go home last summer to the East Coast and have an apartment on the other side of the country so that we could do snowbird life, so that we could spend time with our friends and our family back home and make memories with those loved ones, that is far more important for us, right? That's our value system. But when I look at these tiny little things, the seemingly insignificant moments of yesterday, we had like long coffee in the morning before we got to work. Normally we hit the ground running, we do the thing, we have the meetings, we're on calls. But on Fridays, a lot of times our day's a little bit more open. And we sat outside for 2 hours and we had coffee with no pressure. And neither one of us had to quote unquote go to work or get dressed for the office or be on someone else's schedule or ask for a day off or use one of our precious days off for something like that. That's the stuff. It's like the small, seemingly insignificant moments for us that make entrepreneurship worth it. So it's what you're doing and the ripple effect that you're making and the impact that we get to make globally. But for in the inside world, in the core here, it's just we get to create our life, which we all do. We're the creator of our life. And even if you're in a 9-to-5 job and you do have to ask for a vacation time and your salary is capped, you're still the creator of your life and how you choose to show up and who you choose to become and who you choose to surround yourself with. And what you choose to learn and how you choose to react to situations, we are the creator of all of that. So even if you're not a quote unquote entrepreneur, you still have the ability to create all of that. And I just want to remind you of that. So I hope I answered your question. I appreciate you asking this question. I love this question so much. My life has changed significantly. I don't even remember the version of myself that I was 7 years ago when I was a full-time teacher, or 12 years ago before I had gotten into these side hustles, or 16, 17, 20 years ago when I was in the fashion industry, or going to school for physical therapy. And I think that's the most important part. We're always evolving and growing. And I'll leave you with this. I used to think that the word pivot was a really negative thing. Oh my God, she pivoted again. She quit. For a really long time, I felt that I was a quitter. I dropped out of my doctorate program. I then dropped out of the fashion industry and then dropped out of being a school teacher. And so for a really long time, I judged myself and I thought that I was a quitter. When something was no longer interesting to me, I would walk away from it. Not when it got hard. I could deal with the hard. It was like when I felt that I had almost mastered it, when it had become almost too comfortable, too easy, where it wasn't stretchy and it wasn't making me uncomfortable. It was boring to me, and then I would walk away. And I thought that I was a quitter. And I thought that this word pivot was bad. She's pivoted so many times. She's quit. She's done so many things. She's lived so many lives. That's a bad thing. And over the years, as we named the company Digital Business Evolution, I realized I'm not pivoting. I'm evolving. I'm evolving into a new version of myself. I'm 39 years old. If I were the same person, if I thought the same way and acted the same way and hung out with the same people, I'm not saying don't keep the same friends, but if I were in the same conversations and the same habits from when I was 21, I'd be really disappointed. I am not proud of my 21-year-old self. I love her. She was freaking awesome. Awesome. I'm obsessed with my 21-year-old self. But that was 20 years ago. I would hope that I'm a different person. And I will never forget, I think it was 5 years after college, I had a reunion with some of my college friends, and one of my roommates from college made a comment in front of all of the girls. There were, maybe 8 of us. And she said to me, only me, in a very derogatory, negative tone with a chip on her shoulder and kind of a grimace on her face, "Jess, you've changed." And I won't say her name, but I wanted to just be like, yeah, and you haven't. You're saying it like it's a bad thing that I've changed. We're 5 years post-college. Of course I've changed, but you haven't changed. And to me, that's less interesting. That's not where I want to be. So anyway, as you grow and evolve, so will your business, so will your relationship, so will your ability to have difficult conversations, so will how you react to things, so will how you see things. And that's why we named the company DBE, because we're always evolving and growing. And as we grow and evolve, so does our business. So as always, my friends, on that, cheers to our evolution. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you loved this episode, I invite you to be a part of our ripple effect and share it with a friend. And please, if you feel called, take 30 seconds to leave a 5-star review, and I'll be forever grateful. Until next time, cheers to your evolution.